cycle is not.
Welcome to Say Anything, the talk show, a new way of talking. Today we have a guest, and our spontaneous conversation will be about the subject that I came up with, mind your business. Although it's not exactly what you might imagine the subject is truly about, but we'll get in that in a moment. Guest, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, well, tell us something brief about yourself.
I'm a single mother of 2 daughters that are very active and a social service worker and just a family person, a friend, and typically most of the time a shoulder.
Okay. So, one of the things that I've discovered in how I wanted to have this conversation is because it seems that sometimes in our lives, period, sometimes burdens and things that we carry are because things are what I call out of their natural order. So, with that being said, the true path that I want to take with this mind of your business is this conversation is for those people who are that one, that person, that friend, that lover, that spouse that is the go-to person that carries maybe unnecessary burdens, conversations, or things that we shouldn't have. So perhaps the mind your business would be that you have a brother or a sister that has struggles. Well, now you take on those struggles, or your parents' struggles, or conversations, or health issues. All those things, there's a certain population of people that tend to carry all of that. So this conversation is for, and at the end there'll be a second part to the show where people will respond to our conversation. But again, I always imagine with these conversations that we'll find people at the beginning of that journey to where they are not minding their business and they're carrying all of these burdens, and they're trying to be the savior of a family or that relationship, or a savior of their adult children, or what have you, but they haven't acknowledged it yet. Then there's that person that's in the middle of that, like most human beings are, that have that trait. So they're in the middle of that, and then there may be that one at the end that decided that I am going to mind my business, and I did, and here's how I do it. And I often equate to, a lot of people ask, why don't I have clinical psychologists or psychiatrists? And I may, but for me it has always been this thought process that, and I've dealt with it in dealing with at-risk males, that their conversation with a psychologist or a psychiatrist that has not had their experience is totally different from them having a conversation with a person that's walked that walk, taken that journey that you're now trying to take them down, so they can say, here's what I did when things got hard. If I'm a drug counselor that was a former drug addict, I can tell a heroin addict, here's what it's going to be like on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here's what you need to do. A clinical psychologist that has never had that experience before can't share that information. They can only talk about technical things and book things, but that person knows what they have to do. So in this situation with you, with this conversation, we want to have this broad conversation about minding your business and where you are in your journey, where it began. At what point did you even realize that you needed to mind your business? So now you have the floor, so let's begin with the beginning. Did it ever come to a point in your life when you realized that you needed to mind your business?
Absolutely. Of course, life is a teacher in itself. As you mentioned, books, professors, other people's testimony sometimes does not, mount up to what life will deal you in terms of your own hand. So this is a very good topic because I found myself at the beginning in some areas, in the middle of others, and at the end of a whole lot of them.
Right.
So I'm getting it. I'm a work in progress, but I've definitely found myself minding other people's business, be it them physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, whatever, just carrying the weight of a lot of people, family, friends, associates, business colleagues, employees, et cetera, and it just became too much to the point to where when I got down on my lowest and didn't have anybody to look to honestly but God to say, all right, what do I need to do? And I started putting in the work on myself. And one thing I had to realize is I had to start creating boundaries, because I realized that I didn't have a whole lot of boundaries set, especially with the whole mindset of, I'm my brother's keeper. And, if I have, $1, then 50 cents of it is yours. And, going through all these old, these cliches that we grow up with and things that we're taught by society and by family and by other people around us, until I had no one to turn to, and I had to go through the struggle a lot on my own in a lot of different cases. Even if it was I had somebody to assist financially, mentally I was broken on the inside, so I had to figure out a way to deal with my own business and set everybody else's stuff aside for 5 minutes to get to my own.
So most people are creatures of habit, and
Yes.
things become habit forming. Not only for those of us that were in a situation where we did not mind our business, but the other ones who, because what happens often is people will solicit you to mind their business. See? So they bring their things to your table. So the question for me there is, have you recognized that relationship can be habit forming on both sides? That here's my business, and then you as a facilitator, okay, let me mind your business.
Absolutely. I became let me try to fix it, and if I can't fix it, let me find somebody else that can fix it. If that person can't fix it, then let me fix it. I became the resource center. I tell people all the time, my cell phone is a resource center.
Right.
If you need something or you have a question about something, if I can't figure it out, I can go on my phone and find a link. But I found myself being that table all the time, and to the point to where I just had to cut it off. And cutting it off means shutting it down. It was even with my own mom, like, listen, I'm going to let you handle that. But before you bring something to me, ask me if I'm okay to accept what it is you're bringing. And I need to know a little, just a little smidgen. You got to go to details about what it is. And I'm going to tell you, yes, let's talk about it. Or no, I can't talk about it, because I can't even carry my own burdens, yet alone trying to carry other people's burdens. And I found myself in situations to where, as me and friends talk about, like me taking the place of somebody's God, until God allowed things to dry up in my own space, to where I didn't have the money to help anymore,
right,
or I didn't have the energy to listen anymore, or my tolerance level was at zero, so I just didn't give a damn.
Right.
At some point, because it's like, all right, enough is enough. But again, I talk about boundaries and leaving open spaces for people to come in. And as you mentioned, just being in a situation to where, society and family has taught us that these are things that we're supposed to do. But I heard somebody say that, when God gives you that seed, that's for you to plant,
Mm-hmm.
and you allow it to grow. And you give from your harvest, from your overflow. You don't give that seed that God gave to you away and then wonder why what happened to yours, and that's not just even just from a tangible thing, but that's even intangible. You allow somebody to come and disrupt your peace. You were sitting there
Right.
chilling, watching a movie, taking a nap, and next thing you know, somebody calling with some crazies on the phone, and now you, as even me, jumping up trying to figure out what I can do, when I really honestly didn't have the energy to do it, or even sometimes just didn't feel like doing it. One powerful word that I have learned is the word no.
Yes, yeah.
I've realized that before I felt guilty by saying no, or I felt like I needed to justify by saying no, but now this girl is graduated. I'm like, no, it is. I don't have to
Right.
make an excuse anymore. It ain't that I don't have it. I just don't damn want to do it.
Right.
Simple as that. I don't want to go. I don't want to do. I don't want to see. I don't want to hear. And it's okay, because I call it self-preservation now. I used to call it being selfish. I think it was selfish, but it's self-preservation. I got to preserve myself for me, and then my two daughters. At the end of the day, that's the only. It's the three of us that I'm only responsible for. Everybody else is a bonus at this point.
Right.
And I've realized that.
One of the quotes that, because I life coach myself, and one of the things that I started to repeat to myself is, their priorities will only become their priorities when they are no longer yours. So what happens is, with people with that type of personality that you and I seem to have, and a whole lot of others, what happens is, all of a sudden, if we take a step back and look, those people's priorities became ours. So they are sleeping at night, and you aren't sleeping at night about their situation. So you don't have peace and don't have rest about their situation, because their priorities have become yours, and they don't
Absolutely.
have any, because now we've created this habit of, they now don't have to worry about their priorities, because you shifted it out of its natural order, and now their priorities are yours. So my question to you is, when you learn to say no, a lot of people, when we graduate or mature or change in that area, now that person that is used to handing you their priorities, when their priorities are no longer yours, have you ever received any kickback or changes in attitude, or not understanding what's going on, and they're upset with you as if the roles were reversed and you are not handling your business, but really in their mindset, your business is actually theirs?
Absolutely. Well, look, who I start with and where I start. Absolutely. I've had situations where, assisted a person in getting a loan, and I'm thinking it was one amount, and it ended up being way more than that. And when I reached out to him to say, hey, yo, like, this is what we agreed upon, but I got a call saying that you asked or requested this amount, and they get an attitude with me telling me, well, everybody not able to do X, Y, and Z, and, you think you better than, and you think you all that, but now the same person just co-signed for the loan that you still defaulted on.
Right.
And it's affected me. I think about, when I'm saying no, and now I'm the boogeyman from hell, and now I'm that, person that's just the villain because I said no, or even dealing with a staff member that's asking for an advance on their check. Now, I did it a couple times because you came with this story, and knowing me, I'm like, damn, Like, he got to get his medicine, she got to get her medicine, and next thing you know, I gave you one, I gave you two advances, but you're making really good money. You just misprioritizing your money, your budget, and now you come back to me. The one time I tell you no, now you back here talking behind my back, throwing shade to other staff because I told you no. Because my only way to help you is to help you help yourself by learning how to budget and prioritizing your money. That's not my fault. That's not my responsibility as an employer. So I found myself skewing roles even in places in situations like that. Even sometimes with my own children, I find myself being the boogeyman where before they were able to do certain things and now mama tired. And I'm like, no, and now they got attitude with me. So yeah, I've been the boogeyman from all which kind of directions, but it's been good. And it's been a learning experience for me too, because what I've also learned for myself is I've created a codependency.
Yep.
From other people and their expectations. No, I don't think I'm God. I'm not even here to even step in those shoes or in that role. But other people looked up to me in certain spaces, and then they put their expectations on me that I didn't know that they had.
Right.
And then me subconsciously actually put those expectations on myself that was unfair to me. So I had to go back and apologize to myself, saying, look, I apologize, self, for taking on some things that wasn't yours to take on, but because of empathy, sympathy, or just, feeling bad or whatever the case may be, or this is what I was supposed to do, I took it on, but I took it on at the space of lack of rest, which then resulted to heart palpitations, that then resulted to a perfect stranger telling me, when she asked me, what do you do? And I told her all these wonderful things I'm doing in the community, this and whatever. And she said, that is great, but I'm going to call you selfish. And I was like, what? Did you just not hear all the wonderful things that I'm doing? And she said, yes, I'm going to call you selfish because out of all those things that you've done, your eulogy is going to be so beautiful, but nobody's going to be able to raise your children like you've been able to raise them and love them and care for them. Nobody's going to be able to treat you the way you could treat yourself if you took out time for you. So I'm going to tell you, get yourself together, start saying no and do what you got to do for you first. And then for anything that you may have left that you may choose to do, then do that for other people. But that's beautiful, the things that you're doing, but that's still not right and that's selfish. And I was just like, wow, I'll sit there crying because this lady didn't know me from anything or anybody. And that was another wake-up call with that experience.
Okay, so now let's transition to, and people that are listening or watching, you can raise your hand, although I won't see, or you can give it a good or you can type it in the responses. But I'm really curious to get the response for people that can relate to a lot of us, people that suffer from, or at the beginning stage of not minding our business in that way, is that parents, but particularly mothers, can be the conduit, the connection to a whole lot of us not minding our business because they traffic all of everybody's issues to you, to the responsible son, to the responsible daughter, to the responsible spouse. They come bearing news. So what would you say to that person that's in that situation? I know how I resolve my issue, but I don't know whether you have or not, but what would you say to a person, or explain where you are in your journey as it relates to, if that is the case, that because
one word
go ahead
that I would keep saying is boundaries. You got to set boundaries. Certain things that, even, yes, my mother has been able to share with me, from this person to that person to her own self to this to that and the other. That's also my best friend, so we share a lot. But certain things are overwhelming, and certain things became overwhelming. So at times I have a whole attitude with her It is not even her situation. But I felt like because it's my mom, it's also my friend, that I'm supposed to listen. I'm supposed to carry what she's carrying and, cry when she crying, this not whatever. But I had to get to a point to where I had to have a conversation to say, listen, I understand these wonderful things that you're doing in the community, or I understand you trying to help brother so and so and sister so and so, and I understand. But listen, all that's on you. That's what you choosing to carry. That's what you're choosing to do. Those are the reasons that you have. But I'm going to ask you going forward that when it comes down to certain situations, ask my permission.
Right.
To see if that's something I want to engage in. And don't feel like I'm being disrespectful when I let you know right now I just can't listen, or right now I just can't help, or right now I don't want to hear it, especially when it comes down to siblings. That becomes a real sensitive area.
Yes.
But I think about in certain situations we were all dealt the same hand. I just played my cards a little bit different.
Right.
Simple as that. So don't give me a guilt trip or make me feel bad for not wanting to, or not, or being moved by your movement. That's your children. That's your community, brothers. That's your organization. That's your stuff. I got my own.
Right.
And so really, setting boundaries.
Those that suffer from this illness, right? So at what point do the guilt of no, at a certain point, because a lot of times, which is why I love having these conversations, we think these things but we won't dare say them to the people. So at what point do you say, I owe you nothing, I never have owed you anything? Or do a lot of people carry that burden of the guilt of no? What will happen if I say no? What will become of them? And then if whatever their journey is takes a wrong turn, would have taken that wrong turn had I not said no. So for some people, I truly believe, and I'll be interested in the responses, but for some people, they are stuck for that very reason, that they do not want to deal with the guilt of no.
That's a good one. Honestly, it has taken some self-work, honestly, to get there. It's taken some me getting mad as hell. It's taken some me getting broken as hell. Broken as in not broke financially, which I've been there too, but just broken, where I had nothing left to give, and I had to start doing some self-evaluation to say, how did I get here? Why am I here? And what am I going to do once I can try to figure out how to pull myself up out of this? How do I not go back to this place? And again, go back to my favorite word, boundaries, and yes, it is hard to say no. And in certain situations, I've seen people, become very broken, deeper because of the one thing I could have possibly done. But when I had peace in my mind about saying no, because one thing I can say just from a spiritual aspect, I ain't talking about a religious, I'm talking about a spiritual relationship, where I feel an umpting in my spirit to say, okay, Shantae, do, or, do this or do that, or say this or say that. But I've learned now in just my self-discipline within myself and my self-evaluation to now wait before responding, where normally I'll react and respond before processing the situation through. So creating boundaries, and then just, getting that umpting of, okay, I need to do this, or I may not hear anything, and I know a person is at their lowest of low, but if I don't hear it and if I don't feel it, me asking God, saying like, Lord, like, help me to accept the prayer of serenity, help me to accept this thing, no matter which direction this may go. Like, I have the ability to help, But if it's not your will and you don't say go do it, I'm not going to do it. Because sometimes what I found too, I'm gonna throw this in there, we sometimes interfere with God's process on stuff. Sometimes, yeah, that person may be at their lowest of low, but it may have taken that lowest of low to get them back to where they need to be. So that me saying no may have been the very thing to save their life. But if I gave them that money at a time when they were strung out on drugs, and because of me feeling bad for them and wanting them to, pay their rent or whatever may be behind, me giving them that money, if they're not ready and then they have not gone through their process of their lowest of low, me giving that money just fed into that habit and put them back out in the streets. So it's kind of like a damn if you do and a damn if you don't, to be honest with you. But you got to have peace within yourself and find peace within that situation.
Or what they do is they adapt. So you paid my light bill for 3 months. So now I've taken the money that I should be using to pay my light bill, since now you pay my light bill, and I go out to the club with that money. And what I found is this: why with most of my conversations with people that end in a number of situations, it is because things are out of their natural order. So as a consequence, what happens is daughters become wives and husbands, sons become wives and husbands, sisters become boyfriend and girlfriends, sisters, daughters and sons and uncles become parents to kids that have parents, and so forth and so on. So things are now out of their natural order. So now my sister, who's now divorced, I'm a female, but she's now replaced her ex-husband's duties with me. So now I'm my sister's husband. See, all but the sexual part of it. Now she shifted all that over on me. So now things are awkward between myself and my sister. And the true reason is because they're out of their natural order. You should have never been in that situation anyway. Or I inserted myself because I thought I was doing a good thing, because I see my brother's children going down the wrong path. So now I inserted myself. Where now that I inserted myself, now my brother stood back.
Right.
So now I'm my brother's parent. So now, if you just search your mind and think about how many situations you've seen that, and think about it was purely because things are out of their natural order. We put ourselves in a situation and we step into shoes that our feet were never meant to fit.
That's good. I can just start with something very, easy and simple but close but dear, is, going through a divorce, being married, and then going through a divorce. But in that marriage, of course, we went through premarital counseling with a preacher, and, I understood my wife my role as a wife, and, he, understood his role as a husband, and I'm supposed to be the helpmeet, and, et cetera, et cetera. So we went through this, we went through all we needed to do, got married, and so when things start, falling behind at a certain period in our marriage, I'm like, oh, well, I'm the helpmeet. I'm supposed to pick up the pieces for my husband and make certain, I carry things until he can pick things back up. Well, unfortunately, I kept picking things up and he kept falling back and kept getting into tough stuff, because it was like, well, she got it, or she know people that got it, or, we gonna be fine. And I started finding myself more and more in that whole provider, head of household, go get it mode. And now I'm basically married to a teenage son that's into stuff, that's rebellious, that's doing all this stuff. But all I know is, as a wife, I'm a helpmeet. I'm supposed to stand with my husband. I'm supposed to be here with my husband. I'm supposed to support my husband if things happen. So I didn't create boundaries within myself, and I didn't create boundaries within that situation. And I just kept doing it, just kept doing it, just kept doing it. He just kept getting in trouble and kept just being lackadaisical about a lot of stuff, making irrational and crazy decisions. It took for the separation and then the divorce of our marriage, and him, getting with this one person that's like, all right, you got locked up, you're going to sit right there, buddy. He has not been locked up since then.
All right.
Because for me, every time it was something happened, came up, I was right there bailing him out every single time. Every time, we didn't have money for bills, I was right there catching up. This man is now on his own, living in his own place for I think over a little bit over a year now. He's gonna pay his own rent and his own bills. He's not been locked up in a little bit over 7 years and it wasn't anything bad. It was just I forgot to pay this or I forgot to do that. And no DUIs or anything like that. But because I call myself Captain Save-A-Ho, was out here just, anytime something happened, I was right there. It never forced him to step up to the plate and be a man, but I was kind of in that situation, okay? Do I let these lights get turned off to prove a point, or do I pay this bill so that we can keep these lights on? And so I do understand that people, a lot of people are in situations where it's like, if I do this, then this is going to happen. But if I don't do this, then this can happen. But sometimes it's willing to take the gamble. Like I said, it's been 7 years. He hadn't been locked up, but when we were together those 11 years, short of 15 years of marriage before the divorce was final, every year, 3 and 4 times a year, he was locked up. And like I said, it wasn't for anything like DUIs, anything crazy. It was you ran a traffic light or you ran a stop sign. You forgot to pay the ticket. All right, they place a warrant for your arrest because you didn't even show up for court, and now you're locked up. Now I'm getting a collect call. Now I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna bail you out, and it's just kept going on. It kept going on, kept going on. So I'm learning now, even in this whole dating space again, and trying to bounce back in certain areas. It's like, listen, I got to stay in my lane. I got to know my role and know my position, and also put together boundaries and expectations, be it a relationship, be it with your children, be it on your job, be it with your business. Like, you got to put forth boundaries and expectations and make certain that it is clearly expressed and that both parties are understanding on such, and the consequences one way or the other on the result if certain things don't happen. And I think that for me, I lacked boundaries, but I had great expectations.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't experienced this, I want to transition to this other subject, and I'll be very interested in the responses. But I don't know if you have or haven't fallen prey to what I call the move-in special. Now, the move-in special, for a lot of people that have experienced it becomes, okay, I'm in a bind and I just need to stay with you for 30 days or 60 days because I work and have this amount of money coming in, right? So now you turn around and let's say 6 months later, right? This person still had a job, and I know a certain situation with a certain person that this lasted for 4 or 5 years. That was supposed to be temporary. The whole time, mind you, this individual kept a full-time job, but they adapted and they adjusted. So now, before you were paying rent and you were paying light and water, now this person allowed them to stay there for 5 years, but month after month, what happened was they took that money that they should have been saving to do the move-in special and then leave. All of a sudden they've adapted that process. So now this individual was stuck with this person and a child in their home for years. And that is what I call that move-in special. It's easy to move them in, but it's very, very difficult sometimes to sever that pattern in that relationship, because then your mind goes through, okay, so now they have nowhere to live. So if I put them out, they're going to be homeless. So that is what I call, and I warn people about that move-in special. Be prepared. And even there are certain rules, and certain people are educated now to, okay, you allow me to come live with you.
Mm-hmm. I was just about to talk about that legal aspect.
You just can't tell me to leave. So have you known of anybody that experienced the move-in special?
I have known some people that have experienced a move-in special. Now, not me together, because I love my space right now. I'm loving my girls and we good. Right. But I do know other people that have gone through that process where they have allowed people to move in And kind of piggybacking off what you said, now they got to go down to court and file.
This was the first part, one part of two parts of conversation as we await the reaction from first part, and then continue on with that conversation. But again, stay tuned for part two of Mind Your Business, Mind My Business. Take care. Have a good night.